of the zoning ordinance, an appeal by an administrative decision or interpretation of the zoning ordinance text, state law provides an avenue of review through the Zoning Board of Appeals. Unlike a decision by the Planning Commission that must be approved or can be overturned by the City Commission, the decision by the Zoning Board of Appeals is final. There is no review or opportunity for overturning by the City Commission. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act provides at Section 606(3), an appeal for the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals shall be filed within 30 days of the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision in writing signed by the chairperson, if there is a chairperson, or signed by the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals if there is no chairperson, or within 21 days after the Zoning Board of Appeals approved the minutes of its decision. The court may affirm, reverse, or modify the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The court may make other orders as justice requires. Okay, having said all this, is the applicant here? Obviously so. All right. First, we want to do the minutes of the last meeting before we take a vote. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Yeah, there was a formatting error where we had the wrong attendees at the top. I'm not aware of content errors unless you folks have any, but we'll make the formatting corrections.
Okay. With that,
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
motion by Roger,
Support.
support by Pat. Scott?
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Minutes are passed. Sorry, I keep getting you guys mixed up. Okay. The applicant, Midwest Sign Company, on behalf of owner David Zuspan? Zuspan? Steel Marcia Trust has applied seeking to install 2 wall signs, each 80 square foot, with a total sign area of 160 square foot, to be installed on the front walls of 2 buildings located at 2640 Mullins Avenue Northwest, zoned ML Light Industrial and ML Heavy Industrial. This is contrary to Section 94-411D1, Section 3 of the Walker Zoning Ordinance, which restricts industrial zone sites with a building footprint of less than 100,000 square feet to 80 square foot of total permissible wall signage. The applicant has provided the following findings of fact for this request. Exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. That there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances of conditions applying to the property in question as to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zoning district. The applicant's response was that they have 2 different businesses at one address and would like a sign for each building. Preservation rights. That such variance is necessary for preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right similar to that possessed by other properties in the same zoning district and in the vicinity. The possibility of increased financial return shall not of itself be deemed sufficient to warrant a variance. The applicant's response was there are 2 separate businesses that would like to identify separately. No detriment. Authorizing such a variance will not be substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the intent and purposes of this chapter or public interest. Applicant's response is that this is a sign, so it will not be a deterrent. They are non-lit. Not a general problem. The condition or situation of the property, piece of property, or the intended use of such property for which a variance is sought is not so general or recurrent in nature as to make reasonable, practical, and formation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. Applicant's response was these signs will not be a general problem as they are located on the buildings, on the property, and they will not be lit. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dan?
Sure. I will go through a quick set of background slides like usual, and then I'll release this to be talked about by the applicant. Here is the site, 2 buildings, 2 different businesses, part of the same overall operation, to my understanding. They just have different arms of the business, and I think the applicant can explain what they do a little bit better. Here's the site looking eastward at Mullins using pictometry. Here's the zoning of the site. It's primarily this MH, heavy industrial zoning, that you see kind of following the old rail bed south of 3 Mile. You have kind of that buffer of heavy industrial zoning there before you get closer to 3 Mile, and you have some of the lighter industrial. How that translates is a little fuzzy, because I think we have plenty of uses that are not really high intensity heavy industrial uses like this one in that zoning. So they're, for all intents and purposes, they're pretty similar to the ML uses in a lot of cases, but it is a larger site with that darker gray zoning, meaning a slightly bigger setback and a little bit more permission for some heavier uses. So your role tonight is to hear and decide an application for a variance, which is just relief from one of our zoning rules. Pretty straightforward type of request. And here's the request. Instead of 1 sign, and it's not the number of signs, it's the square footage, so I should catch myself there. Instead of a limited footprint of 80 square feet of total wall signage, you have 160, because each of these signs is proposed as 80 square feet. To give you a little bit more orientation, and I have Google Street View up as well, you have some landscaping here. I think the idea is to provide some additional wayfinding to orient people using the either the automation part of the site or the corporate office kind of main part of the site in the back. Tool and die. Yeah. Okay, so tool and die part of the site in the back, and that's the main intent here. Keeping in mind we do allow some directional signage, but my understanding is they want to go with the wall signage for more visibility. Here's a little bit of zoning context. I just pulled this map together to show the entire scope of this zoning district in Walker, because some of the criteria you're asked to answer relate to how this property connects to other properties zoned the same way. So everything you see on this map is our MH, heavy industrial zoning, kind of following 131, following 3 Mile, following Panel Street, and then a little bit in South Walker down at the Fenske site. The other main reference I put in this packet is just a list of all the heavy industrial zone lots, and I highlighted the ones that are kind of in that focus area near the top of the list for some comparison of area of the sites, number of buildings on these sites, size of the buildings, and whether specifically wall sign area variances were granted for these ones in the focus area. When I'm looking at this, I'm going to improv here a little bit and just mention that in full transparency, there's a very large site here, the Avistar industrial site. There by Avistar Parkway was the former Lear facility. That's technically zoned the same way, and that certainly does have overages on signage. So I think it's fair to point out that there is another site where I believe some variances were granted as part of the overall original approval of that redevelopment. It used to be the GM plant. Now there's 4 or 5 different tenant spaces, each with their own sign footprint, significantly over the wall sign allotment. So while there are none in this vicinity, I will point out that there are some that have been granted because I think it's only fair to point that out. But that is a pretty unique site. I believe that has to be our largest or close to our largest industrial building footprint.
Not like a PUD though?
It's actually just a straight MH zoning. It was not rezoned to IPUD as part of the approval. I believe it falls in this dark gray area here. The commercial outlots out front are part of a PUD, so they have a little bit more flexibility. So I'll just run through my really quick high-level findings, and I'll leave it to the applicant to fill in some more gaps. But my role to kind of point out, to kind of scrutinize how these responses are given, and point out how this site relates to the other sites in relation to the questions for these dimensional variance criteria. So the first criterion is Subject lot area is a little bit larger than some of the other, the mean area of MH zoned lots in Walker. So in that context, you can decide if this is an exceptionally large lot and needs an exceptionally high amount of wayfinding. That might be how you frame that part up. It is larger than the average MH zoned lot, but not by a ton. By about, the average is you can see there on the screen, 355,000, give or take, square feet for most of the other lots, and then almost 563,000 for this lot. The preservation of rights, one of the things you look at is whether lots, in this case, in the vicinity of the site as well as in the same zoning as this site, have been afforded a right similar to what is being requested. I'll point out the applicant made a point that there's 2 businesses here and 2 buildings. There are some other sites in the vicinity with 2 or more principal buildings in this zoning district, and I did not find a case of any variances for wall signage being granted in terms of wall sign area on any sites in the vicinity. So that's one thing to look at. Do other sites have wall signage? Certainly. Do they have more than 80 square feet of wall signage after the passage of this ordinance? I couldn't find any examples of that.
Do those other 5 sites there have multiple businesses on those buildings, or is it single business?
I didn't dive into that in depth. I do have some examples of sites I was aware of in similar zoning that have multiple businesses. They're more the ones I found are in ML or MP zoning. There's 4 different industrial zoning categories in Walker, so it can be a little confusing. There's industrial park, which kind of works similarly to an industrial PUD, which is kind of a comprehensive project that's all designed together. There are some industrial park sites where there are 2 buildings working as kind of a suite together. It's actually a Remembrance and 3 Mile there. You have like 6 different tenant spaces in one site. Recently built one on 3 Mile is zoned ML, right before you hit the railroad tracks heading east on 3 Mile. So there are some examples of sites with multiple businesses. I don't know that any of these 5 sites with 2 or more buildings have multiple businesses in them. Jumping ahead to the no detriment question, you look at the intent of the sign ordinance and you get down to the meat and potatoes of it is driver distraction, clutter on the roadways. The easy way to think about this is think about Times Square or Las Vegas, or for that matter, Alpine Avenue, which we're trying to clean up. But you have all those distractions on the roadway. It can cause a driving hazard. That's the main issue and sort of a visual nuisance. Now on an industrial site like this that's pretty isolated, probably not as big a deal, but it's kind of the replicability of this pattern that you want to look out for and make sure that you're not opening up the door for increasing the likelihood that would happen elsewhere. To a benefit, the applicant might say this has a certainly a wayfinding benefit, which kind of counters the other points, because wayfinding and sort of legibility of a site is another part of the sign ordinance, that we try to make sure that the signage is clear and helps you to navigate through a site, and I think that's the intent here. But by and large, I don't think a strong enough case has really been made for no detriment based on combined between the no detriment criteria and this site being exceptional. I don't know that a strong enough case has been made there. Finally, whether there needs to be a text amendment to basically increase the size of the wall sign area. This ordinance was passed only, it was first written in 2007 and then amended through 2012 or so, and I think it's a pretty fresh ordinance that had a lot of recent thought behind it, so I don't see a need to update the ordinance to expand that wall sign area. So you folks with the ZBA can hear the applicant out. My take as of right now, I don't see the preservation of rights, no detriment, and not a general problem criteria being met. In terms of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, you can look at that size. It is a little bit larger than some of the other sites, so that one's a little more open-ended. Remember that denial is appropriate if you can't justify any one of these being met. You have to make sure you justify that all 4 of them have been met. But as I say there at the end, you can explore this further and hear the applicant make his case.
Thank you, Dean.
And there is a public hearing.
Can I have a motion to open the hearing?
Motion to open the hearing.
Motion by Roger,
I'll support.
support by Pat. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Hearing is open. Okay, are you ready?
I am.
Okay.
I'll be as ready as I
Can we
can
get
be.
your name, please? And
I'm Jeremy Koch. I am with Midwest Sign Company. And yeah, so basically Dan went through all of these very well. A couple of the things that I wanted to bring to the attention. One of the things that you said, we were unclear on those other sites being multiple businesses amongst those lots. So that's an uncertainty in my opinion. Another thing to bring to your attention is, could we pull up the aerial again?
Yeah.
There you go. One of the things that they're struggling with as a business, as you can see, this is on the end of a cul-de-sac. The building, I don't know which direction that is there, but to the right as you're pulling down the drive, that's a customer entrance as well at the very end there, and those parking lots are connected. That being said, they're looking for, more often than not, people, outsider clients coming into their facility. This is a destination place, not a retail industry. They got clients coming in to look at their products and have meetings, etc. So when they're traveling here, they get to the end of this cul-de-sac, and GPS, as we all use, is you've arrived at your destination. They're going into this office. No, it's across the street or across the parking lot. These parking lots are virtually connected. So that was a big part of the signage on that building, which I understand that we're allowed the signage on the building. We're allowed 80 square foot of signage combined, so I could do 40 square foot on each building. However, a sign of that size, that's a 4 foot by 8 foot sign on a building facade that's 100 plus feet wide. That's a postage stamp. Now, what else was I going to say? As far as being of clutter to the township, I respect your guys' ordinance and keeping Alpine clean. This is on the end of a cul-de-sac. What may happen with that property in the future, being industrial, you guys would know better than I would, but this is strictly a destination site. Again, it's not retail. And the only customers or traffic going down this road is strictly for destination truck drivers, clients, etc. for both of these businesses, including the partnering business there. As far as the wayfinding benefit, I think that Dan had made the suggestion that they're allowed more of a monument sign out there. However, one of their concerns about that is that they're already dealing with direction or truck driving directional traffic. If they pull in, or if larger truck traffic pulls into that second drive there, there's virtually no way out of that. So they have to catch them for automation before they get to tool and die. So they basically wanted the bigger the better as far as the identification on the second building is what they're requesting. They want to be visible from the end of that cul-de-sac. So,
Okay,
yeah, I think that's about all that I had to note on that.
okay. Well,
Another question too, just out of curiosity, being as if they're running on two separate businesses, if they were to split that lot between the two buildings, then would they be allowed their 80 square foot per building? given their building facade?
I'm gonna try it. So, yeah, with a catch. The splitting of the lot would require that there's adequate frontage for both lots. So that cul-de-sac would have to be extended to kind of daylight the back half of what's now one lot and be able to split it. There's probably the land area there. It's just that the frontage is not there because the public street ends too short.
And I wasn't necessarily trying to make a case there, and I'm not sure that they would be interested in doing that. I was just trying to figure out, so given the circumstances, being two separate companies, two separate landowners or parcels, would they then be allowed their 80 square feet?
Yeah.
That being said, they could pull this off some way, shape, or form.
Okay, well, we'll open it for questions from the board.
Two questions I have. One, I believe the very, is that west, north, south, the very south building, thank you.
Yeah.
It's one of the four. The very south building that already has a sign on it, correct?
Yes, that sign's coming down.
Okay.
All the signage on the building is coming down, being replaced by these two.
What is the width of those buildings? Are they both the same? Aerially, they look the same. When I drove up to them, they look the same.
Yes, they're both the same width. Obviously, the depth in the other one is, so there's more square footage in the north building.
Okay. Do you know the dimensions? Does anyone know the dimensions?
I did. I do not have that readily available.
Try to pull that out.
If you don't, that's okay. We can.
I do not. We'd have
Okay.
to pull it up online.
I guess we can see that it is the same. When I look at the renderings that you've provided in the packet here,
Yes.
you've got HS Incorporated.
Yep.
I'm going to do it in feet, 11 foot by 7 foot approximately.
Yes.
And then you have HS Automation, 17 feet by 4.5 feet. Is the 4.5 feet high enough to show HS Automation?
To show HS
Automation, is it high enough?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. So my question to you is, if you took for HS and made that 4 feet,
Mm-hmm.
and you also took the 17 feet that's on HS Automation and divide that by 3, so I'm cutting that HS Automation in thirds, that
Okay.
gives you about 5.2 feet. My simple math, and I'm a simpleton, gives me about 22 square feet-ish. That
Mhm.
leaves you with 57 square feet for HS Automation,
Okay.
and you are within the 80 square feet. That labels the signs, and as you said, it's high enough, so it should be kind of a square block. It should say this HS should be representation and see it. If you are okay with that, I don't think you need a variance.
So run that by me one more time, just so that we're
Certainly.
talking HS Automation.
Yep, certainly.
Okay.
So when I look at HS Automation, I see 55 inches tall,
Yes,
which is about 4.5 feet.
yes.
HS Incorporated looks to be a square to me. So if I did 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet, that gives me, somebody help me out, I'm gonna do this here.
Yeah, somewhere between 20 and 25.
It gives me 20.25 square feet.
Yep,
The ordinance allows for 80 square feet of signage.
correct.
So that would give you 59.75 square feet left to do HS Automation.
HS Inc.
HS Inc. Automation, yep.
So building B, if you're looking at my,
No, building B would be 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet,
because it is more rectangular.
correct? And then building A, which is HS Automation that I'm seeing in the packet here. Maybe I'm
Yeah.
not looking at the right thing.
Yep, I'm looking at building it.
Yep, that gives us 59.75 square feet to do HS Inc. automation.
Okay. That would,
Would be less square footage too if you put automation underneath the logo.
That's another thing to look at.
yeah, they're pretty particular on their logo orientation. They've spent a lot of money.
Yeah, I can appreciate, the branding. I'm just thinking,
Do you guys, do you guys calculate the dead space in a logo?
I'll take a shot at that. So we try to do a shrink wrap to the extent of the logo. We try to be flexible if it's kind of an irregular shape.
Because
but
I think that we could make that work.
Okay. Well, for something like this, we would have to calculate basically to the, I'll do this crop to the extent here. But we would have to calculate based on that
Okay.
square area, not dead space in between the letters.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that square area, but if we can eliminate all the square footage above and below automation, I'm confident that we can get,
It's tricky. And we did actually, I was counting that.
Dan, I could be wrong.
Reasonable to do that as a second rectangle. And this is an okay exercise because you can always strip down what you call the square footage. I think it's okay to be conservative up front and say that it's more.
because, yeah, that's a game changer right there. A lot of townships, cities, et cetera, that you have a rectangle and that's your square footage. So if you guys would allow that, I think we could come down on building B, the HS tool and die, building B. I think we could come down a little bit on there to appease the customer.
The one that says HS Inc.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Without automation.
This is basically, is that accurate, Jeremy, Craig, everybody? Is that the direction of the discussion for that tool and die?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking there.
And this one, you have 50 some odd feet to work with.
I had to do this exercise for my company sign. And when I rendered it on the building, I liked it first because it was very huge and awesome.
Yeah.
But then I reeled myself back into reality and said, I don't want to go down this exercise. And I said, well, what does it look like if we put it within the smaller than the variance? And it actually looks, in my opinion, better.
Yeah.
So,
See, I've proofed this for the customer at 40 square feet, and he's not having that.
yeah.
So that's why I'm here today.
Yep.
But yeah, I think if we could, play with rectangles and get that down to 80 square feet between the two buildings, I think that we could, I could actually tuck in the ink on the building B and gain a little bit there. We can get creative with this.
Okay. Dan, does that work?
That works, and I appreciate this conversation because this helps to, there's always these gray areas in the ordinance, and the ZBA is kind of built to help tease out those gray areas. In the past, I have looked at signage like this in a way that you can separate out clearly different components of the sign and do perhaps two squares or two rectangles, and in this case, I think that makes sense. So the real effect here would have been calling that one on the left 80 square feet would really mean you could expand that automation up to fit that footprint. I shouldn't even say that, I'll bite my tongue, but this means that we can always work down into what we're going for, and you are actually asking for less square footage than you say you are. But I think we can also do this in a way that you can just comply with what's in the code, and we don't have to go through all the steps of crossing off the checkbox for all the criteria here.
Yeah, my biggest fear about creating a variance is setting the precedent.
Right, exactly.
I'm happy to not go down that road for you guys. I think with a little bit of scrunching, minimizing, and tightening up his logo, he's not gonna notice 6 inches here and there. I think I can get within your 80 square feet between the two buildings.
Okay,
Knowing that I can, yeah, if the whole sign is a rectangle so if we can tighten that up.
I also like your idea about making it 2 properties too, though. I mean, that's a great one, because the road's there, it's just extending the cul-de-sac, which is simple to do when you look at the aerial there,
Yeah,
but more expensive, give or take.
Yeah, that could be pricey for him.
Yeah,
But it's a good point, if this ever sells, then you could, as part of redevelopment idea, you could extend that cul-de-sac and then kind of daylight that back parcel to be its own space, and then you could double the signage for both buildings at that point.
Then by all rights, he should be allowed 80 square feet per building
At the
Correct.
point that you extend the cul-de-sac and you're able to split the lot.
and a monument for each location.
And it almost looks like that extended driveway up to that south building parking lot, looks like it was an extension of the road at one time anyway.
Could have been,
Because if
This
you
is
look
where
at the aerial,
yeah.
that piece looks like it was an extension of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, let's look at it this way. And this is where I get myself in trouble with the engineers, because we want to make sure we're calling frontage something that's based on improved public street frontage. So we got to make sure we get that we got to get that cul-de-sac back so that it's serving, in this case, 200 feet of frontage for that back lot, as well as the
So
Second
if
from
they
the
had
end.
to deed 200 feet of it to the city as the street,
it's got to be constructed. The road has to be done.
looks like it already is.
it looks like it looks like it's the same pavement.
It looks like the rest of the street is a cul-de-sac.
I'll bring that up. I'll bring that up to the city engineer.
That'd be popular.
I'm sure he'd have some things to say about that stretch, but it's a good idea to look for in the future.
Now, what I was looking to is the picture that you have of the proposed signing there, with the front of the buildings, yeah, that one. You're almost at the end of that cul-de-sac. Well, if people are having wayfinding problems, they're gonna decide when they first get into that cul-de-sac or in the middle of it, before they get past that first driveway. And with those trees there, they're not gonna see the front of that second building anyway.
Yeah, I think his intent was to take out all the bushes and trees.
It also sounds like they're already having truck traffic problems to get around the back of the building and that. So how much directional ground signs can they put in?
2 per driveway, and I think 2 additional on the overall
So
site.
even if right there where that first drive comes in out of the cul-de-sac, if you were to have a sign that said.
He does.
HS,
Yeah.
He's got like a,
HS
Yeah, I see it in there.
Inc.
yeah,
automation with an arrow this way and this way,
yep,
you're right there where they're gonna stop, in the
Right.
middle of that circle.
yep.
So I guess, to me, it doesn't make sense to double the size of the building signs, because I don't think that's gonna solve the whole problem. When they actually need a directional sign right there at the cul-de-sac.
Well, as a business owner, bigger, like you said,
Yeah.
the bigger your sign, the happier he's gonna be. It's one of those things, and it's beneficial for his traffic, I suppose. And like I was saying, when they get in that driveway, even if they're pulling into HS Inc., as Tool and Die Building B, you've got 2 buildings right there. Half their traffic's going in there, vice versa. So I think that was the big thing. And then, in his opinion, he wants the biggest sign he can put up there. Whatever we gotta do to do that.
You can certainly max out the directional signage, and just to clarify, I made an error, it's one per driveway plus 2 additional on the site, plus 1 monument sign up to 48 square feet in area, plus wall signage. So I'll work with you to max out whatever you have available to you with the code.
Okay.
If they're allowed 80 square feet of wall signing, it doesn't have to be 40.
Right.
True.
We can,
So if you went, if you went 40, if you went, 35, 50 or whatever, 35, 55, or 45.
yeah, no,
Yeah, that's where I was going, that 20.25 on one and then the rest on the other. I mean, you can,
yeah. No,
you'll see automation, I promise you.
Yeah, I'll find
Yeah.
a way to make that happen.
Okay, anything else before we close the hearing?
Does he want to withdraw the application then, so we don't deny this? Is that with the,
Yeah, I don't know that, we could get a statement from him on that, and then I would ask, I have a motion in my head that I'll ask one of you to help with. So Jeremy, are you okay with working with staff to shrink this down and recalculate?
Get within the ordinance.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, my idea would be for somebody to make a positive motion, first of all, in the interpretation that staff, that you feel comfortable with staff interpreting wall sign area as shrink-wrapped, clean shapes, we'll call them, around individual sign components. So this is the area for this sign, this is the area for this sign. Are you comfortable with that way of interpreting the square footage in the ordinance? Okay, so maybe based on, somebody can say something to the effect of, based on our conversation about wall sign area interpretation, staff can work with the applicant. So,
Yeah, I think before we always used to take the rectangles because we looked at wall signing as if it were a sign face, whether it was a ground sign, or a pylon sign, or a building sign, and then you drew a box around the parameters. And that was the rule of thumb that the board always used.
okay.
I don't know exactly if it's specified in the ordinance, how it's measured or not. I didn't think it was.
It's not, and that's a helpful point, unless you have a frame. So if you have a frame, if you have a panel on a wall sign, that becomes your area. But channel letter signage like this, that's a
And
point
if
of
you have, like,
interpretation.
you have a logo like the HS, you have to draw a box, but you can't figure all the cutouts and everything else. So it's a box around the logo itself.
Yep. But with
I
two
don't
distinct,
I don't have a problem with isolating those two elements
okay,
as the square footage. Otherwise, you're calculating a lot of blank space in
that's
there.
right.
Anyone care to make a motion?
You ready to close the public hearing first?
yeah.
Okay,
I'll make
Oh.
a motion to close the public hearing.
motion by Elena,
I'll support that.
support by Pat. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Hearing's closed.
All right, I'll make the motion. And I will try to do it positively. So I make a motion in agreeing with staff around the area of signage to be more of a linear rectangle shrink wrap space, to be 80 square feet total to the frontage. That being said, I make a motion to deny the request for the variance based upon that motion, based upon that request.
It's okay?
In concurrence with the applicant's denial, or withdrawal, yeah,
Okay.
that makes sense, yep.
Okay.
I'll
Support,
support that.
support by Pat.
The process here.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
By articulating it.
We're all set. We just need a signature with Roger up here in the red chair.
Okay.
Appreciate you working with us too.
No
Really
problem
do.
at all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys.
Good approach. Good.
You know, even,
Yeah.
yeah, we can have you sign that, just a record of sort of a withdrawal. So I don't know that you need to sign that. But since we're doing it anyway, might as well. Jeremy, you turned in a permit application with this variance request at some point, did you, or do you know if there's still a pending? Okay. So as soon as you get that in, we'll.
Yeah,
If you could just provide a communication.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to revise with,
Okay, yeah, thank you. Have a good evening.
No meeting on August, you want me to jump into updates, comments?
Go ahead.
No meeting on August 14th. Chair is slowly and steadily sounding better. I call him before our meetings every couple of weeks. He's getting around with a little bit of assistance, but he sounds better each time I talk to him, so making progress. He says he'll be at the next meeting. We'll let him make the call on that. Big thing is to follow your medical advice. Otherwise, we have an announcement about Craig. Unfortunately, Craig is gonna be
Yeah,
departing.
so I'm if you guys don't know this, I'm a travel hockey coach, and we were advised about when practices are set for this age group, and they are Mondays and Wednesdays. So, in the interest of not being reliable, I'm gonna have to step down for at least the year.
Gonna miss you.
So hopefully I'm welcome back, when the, hockey's over, but it'll be
Which
for
is
at least a
never.
year.
It's a
Yeah.
long season.
9 months, and it starts next week, so.
Doesn't feel like hockey season, does it?
No, but I've been doing coaching clinics. I'm already drawn up. I've got 2 months of practice plans drawn up already, so it's good fun. But I thoroughly enjoy my time, and hopefully welcome back, because it's fun.
Enjoyed having it.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Roger.
Support.
Craig, he's gotta get the last one.
Supported everything else.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.